Bread.
Come on, somewhere outside Saffron Walden, there's an uncle who's 7 feet tall with no chin and an Adam's apple that makes him look as though he's constantly trying to swallow a ball cock.
I have not got any uncles like that. Anyway, he lives in Walton-on-the-Naze.
Welcome to episode 19 of the Blackadder podcast, where neither of us comes from Walton-on-the-Naze.
No.
We come from a little village just outside it.
It's a little bit more quaint.
And inbred.
And idyllic, yes.
How are you, Ian?
I'm not too bad, Gerry. How are you this week?
I'm very good. I believe this is a favourite episode of yours.
Very favourite, yes.
Your very favourite?
I would say so.
Of all the Blackadders?
Yes.
It's a good one.
It is.
Returning familiar face?
Absolutely.
And not just a familiar face, but a familiar role. She plays a similar sort of character.
I was going to say it's a different sort of character.
Well, I thought the first impressions are that she's quite soppy, quite wet, but it turns out that she's not.
Well, that's similar, but she's much less powerful than she's been in the past.
Sorry, I'm talking about an Amy and amiability.
Again, she's got power in that episode as well, doesn't she? I think this character's a bit less, I'm not sure what the right word, maybe confident or a bit less secure or in control. Maybe.
Less powerful.
Powerful. I've already said that one.
Anyway, we can chat about that as we progress. Do you have a summary for us this week?
Yes.
Well, let's have it then. Crack on.
In General Hospital, Blackadder is asked to root out a German spy operating in the nearby field hospital who has been sending all of the British battle plans, such as they are, to the enemy. With eyes on a promotion that will take him away from the trenches, Blackadder sets about his task. But will he find the culprit? Or will his head be turned by other possibilities?
A clinical summary there, Ian, thank you.
Thank you very much.
In the trench, our three chums are playing a game of I Spy, although Baldric is having to be encouraged to get what?
Well, he's struggling manfully with this task. He doesn't understand the concept of I Spy, I don't think.
Something beginning with M?
M, and George is nodding and holding up the item and waving at him. But it's left to Blackadder to give the correct answer.
Mug. Blackadder himself then sees with his bored little eye something beginning with T, and Baldric demonstrates he doesn't quite understand the rules.
No, he's not got it at all. He thinks the answer must be breakfast, because his breakfast always begins with tea.
And then what?
Toast?
A letter.
Oh, yes, okay.
No, I think Blackadder says it begins with a letter.
Yes, and Baldric says, no, never a letter, because the postman doesn't come until about 10:30.
So a frustrated Blackadder quits before George has his turn at something beginning with R.
Baldric's closer to the mark this time, but Army's not really what he's looking for. I think at this point, Blackadder's frustration boils over.
How does he show that?
He knocks Baldric out.
He does.
I think he what starts with come here and ends with ow.
Yeah.
At this point, George is outraged because Blackadder's misplayed the game.
Yes, explain.
Well, that's not how you play I Spy.
No, it's not.
So he switches it up. George is going to play I Hear with my little ear.
Yes, and here's something beginning with a B, but nobody gets it at first. And they give up until George provides the solution.
It's a bomb. It's getting louder.
It is.
And closer.
They all agree it's a good one until it lands pretty much in their trench.
Unfortunate.
So we cut to the hospital. This is a familiar scene. We've seen George bandaged up after a bomb has hit him.
Sure, yes. He's in bed now, his arm in a sling, receiving a bit of treatment.
Yes, from Nurse Mary. And she's reading out his letter that he has written to his uncle.
Dear Uncle H, how are you? Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Yeah. It's beastly rotten luck being laid up here, but everyone's very nice, and at least now I can write to you every day. Then I put in a silly bit about, it's...
Oh, come on, you can tell me.
And the nurse is an absolute peach. Anyway, After the explosion, Captain Blackadder was marvellous. He joked and joked. "You lucky, lucky, lucky bastard," he cried. And then he lay on his back, stuck his foot over the top of the trench, and shouted, "Over here, Fritz! What about me? What about me?"
Well, Captain Blackadder does indeed sound a most witty and courageous chap.
Yes, and he's very amusing and brave as well. Not to mention being as clever as a chap with 3 heads. Well, thanks ever so much. You really are terribly kind. As well as being dashed pretty to boot.
Oh, you. A fluffy pillow and a big, cheery smile, the least my lovely voices deserve. Now, you take a little trip to Dosyland. You've got visitors coming, and we don't want to be all tired and cross-matched.
Well, absolutely not, no. It'll be so jolly to see Baldrick in the cap again, they'll have been worried sick about me, you know.
All right, where is the malingering git?
You can just about picture how that scene would have gone if they'd actually shown it, the aftermath of the bomb.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit messier, I would have thought.
Maybe a little.
We heard there, I think Miranda Richardson stumbled over a line, and we've heard it a few times in different episodes. I think it's nice, the fact that they don't necessarily look for perfection, they're happy to...
I think part of that is, we talked about this in an earlier episode, they didn't have a lot of time to record. They had a live studio audience, they didn't do a lot of takes, so if you got it wrong, they had to live with it.
Yeah, well, wrong enough. I mean, it's not a...
Yeah, I think one of the points that we made previously, Rowan Atkinson would maybe exaggerate his stutter a little bit if he wanted a particular shot redone, but more or less what you went with was what you got.
As we heard there, Blackadder doesn't believe there is anything wrong with this malingering git, and tells Mary that, far from being best friends with George, he's lost better ones the last time he was deloused.
Yes, he calls her a wet blanket and tells her to leave, because they have military business to discuss.
Yeah, not quite. He is there for the grub sent by George's inbred mutant relatives.
We heard about that at the top of the show.
Yes. And George goes on to list this massive amount of food that has been sent his way. Can you remember any of it?
Well, there was turkey, something or other. Was it cows and jelly?
Yeah, all sorts of things.
1,200 chocolates.
Anyway, he's ate them all.
Yeah, along with the nurse, I think she helped out a few trotters, he said.
She also helped out with his letter writing. Apparently she can do all the German spelling.
That's right. He's quite smitten with her.
Oh, you would be.
I suppose, if that's the only person that's talking to you for the whole time you're in the hospital.
What? She's gorgeous anyway, even if there's other people.
That's true.
Very attractive young lady.
She's giving you attention as well.
Yeah. So this Blackadder gets up to go, and Baldrick gives George his bunch of flowers.
Yeah, they're a bit headless.
Yes. Thought that counts.
Yes.
Mary returns, informing Blackadder that he has been summoned to HQ, and George laments that he can't go and fight with him.
That's exactly what I've written. George laments that he cannot join them. But the nurse says her brave hero must rest.
Blackadder scorns at this.
Yeah, he recalls a time that he was equally badly injured.
Yes, the last time he cut his nails. And she storms off past the entering wounded gentleman claiming to be Mr. Smith, who talks with a very distinct accent.
Yes, I think he's maybe an Austrian or German.
Yeah. Over at headquarters, and Blackadder is called to enter by Melchett, where he finds him hiding behind a map.
Yeah, it's on a notice board of some kind that's in a trolley, and as he spots Melchett hiding behind this board, Darling accosts him roughly from behind and pats him down.
Can anyone tell me what's going on?
Security, Blackadder.
Security?
Security isn't a dirty word, Blackadder. Crevice is a dirty word, but security isn't.
So in the name of security, sir, everyone who enters the room has to have his bottom fondled by this drooling pervert.
Only doing my job, Blackadder.
Oh, well, how lucky you are, then, that your job is also your hobby.
Now there's another dirty word. Job.
So, is there something the matter?
Yeah, damn right there's something the matter. Something sinister and something grotesque. And what's worse is that it's going on right here under my very nose.
Sir, your moustache is lovely.
What the General means, Blackadder, is there's a leak.
Now, leak is a positively disgusting word.
The Germans seem to be able to anticipate our every move. We send up an aeroplane, there's a Jerry squadron parked behind the nearest cloud. We move troops to Boulogne, the Germans have bought the entire town supply of lavatory paper. In short, a German spy is giving away every one of our battle plans.
You look surprised, Blackadder.
I certainly am, sir. I didn't realize we had any battle plans.
Well, of course we have. How else do you think the battles are directed?
Our battles are directed, sir.
Well, of course they are, Blackadder, directed according to the grand plan.
Would that be the plan, to continue with total slaughter until everyone's dead except Field Marshal Haig, Lady Haig, and their tortoise, Alan?
Great Scott! Even you know it!
This leak has been tracked down to the field hospital, and Blackadder is given 3 weeks to smoke the culprit out.
Yeah, and he is delighted to have 3 weeks away from the trenches.
Well, he tried to make it 6 months, but
Even that.
they weren't buying it. He's authorised to use any method he sees fit.
Yes, and Melchett recommends the use of a potty, a todger, and a bap, as well as Fido the dog.
Yes, a Cocker Spaniel, I think. If Blackadder is successful in his mission, he will be needed at headquarters to head up Operation Winkle.
Sounds like a top job.
Yeah, they're going to winkle out the spies.
This puts Darling's nose out of joint, I think.
Yeah, and Melchett tells him there need to be some secrets.
Between them, yeah. Blackadder says that he will be back in 3 weeks, but will not allow Darling to pump him thoroughly in the debriefing room.
Not while he's his strength, anyway. No.
When Blackadder has left, an angry Darling tells Melchett that he doesn't trust Blackadder.
No, he wants to go undercover at the hospital himself.
Melchett thinks this would be a fun idea, having a spy to spy on their spy as he searches for a spy in
Something with
with
spies, yeah. Yeah, but he needs a convincing injury to gain access to the hospital.
And what's that?
Well, he gets shot by Melchett. I think the foot or ankle area.
In the
Anyway.
foot, yeah, very abrupt.
It's different from him shooting himself in the foot, at least.
Back in the trench, Blackadder returns and tells Baldric they are going on holiday.
Yeah, but Baldric's very disappointed to learn that this is to the hospital because he's not a fan of hospitals.
Why not?
I don't know.
His grandfather went in there, and when he came out, he was dead.
Yes, but Blackadder points out he was dead when he went in.
And he doesn't like doctors, as they might want to poke about inside of him, because they might find him interesting. Blackadder notes that he finds the sewage system interesting, but doesn't want to pull things out of it with tweezers.
No. Yeah, it's a bit of an uncomfortable exchange, isn't it?
But Baldric then suggests that there might be an upside to Blackadder's visit.
What's that?
Well, he might be able to get to know Nurse Mary a little better. But Blackadder doesn't see this as a positive and thinks that she is wetter than a fish's wet bits.
Yeah, he wasn't very impressed with her, was he, when he showed up to see George?
No, I think he likes a certain type.
Absolutely. But beggars can't be choosers. At the hospital, George is apparently leaking secrets to the nurse and the German.
Yes, detailing military manoeuvres as Blackadder and Baldric arrive. Mary asks if he is going to conduct himself with more decorum this time.
He says no.
Shove off.
Essentially telling her to get lost once again before explaining the situation to George.
Yeah, and he's got a plan.
It's a really good plan.
Tell me about it.
They're going to check the patient manifest, and anyone whose name is Von something is likely to be the spy.
Sounds sensible to me.
Yeah, and Baldric has a backup plan in case that fails.
What's that?
They go around the hospital and they ask everyone if they are a German spy.
Yeah, Blackadder's not convinced by this. Even the Germans would not require them to have the intelligence of a boiled potato. And Blackadder then orders Baldric to stick with Smith. He's across the room.
Yes, like a limpet.
Yes, make sure he doesn't leave.
At this stage, Darling shows up, duly injured.
He does, and Blackadder can't believe it, that someone so far from the trenches would shoot themselves in the foot. What does he say?
I didn't write down what Darling said. What does Darling say?
He says that he didn't, the general did. And Blackadder remarks that even he eventually got fed up with him. But Darling claims that it was a mistake, and Blackadder retorts that he must have been aiming for his head.
Poor Darling.
Darling claims he wasn't aiming for anything. And Blackadder says, so between your legs.
At this stage, Blackadder has a bit of a surprise for Darling.
Yes, he's going to start his interview process
with him.
We're now in the doctor's office.
It's been turned into an interrogation chamber of sorts.
And we have Darling tied to a chair with a potty on his head and a light shining on his face.
Yes. And no doubt a Cocker Spaniel waiting outside.
He claims this is a nonsense. He's just arrived. Blackadder's having fun with him.
He clearly doesn't like Darling, and he wants to make this as painful an experience for him as possible, but you can tell he's enjoying it.
Oh, yeah. So he starts by asking a question about Britain that I can't remember what it was, but Darling couldn't answer, something very obscure.
Yes, and then he follows up with a question about Germany.
Yeah, like, think who the...
Current head of state.
Yes, and obviously can answer that. So Blackadder acts as if this is suspicious.
It puts Darling on the back foot straight away.
But he then provides him with a cigarette before immediately smacking it out of the stinking piece of crap's mouth, insulting him and shouting for a Cocker Spaniel.
Yes. Darling is terrified.
He's panicking, and he pleads his Britishness. How?
He claims to know all 3 verses of
Four
God-
verses.
4 verses of God Save the King.
And at this he claims to be as British as Queen Victoria. What does Blackadder say?
He points out that that means his father is German. He's half German himself, and he's married to a German.
So crying in despair, he reiterates that he is not a German spy, and Blackadder quickly accepts this and asks for the next man to be brought in.
Darling is fuming.
Well, you would be.
As Darling leaves,
Toddles out with the chair still strapped to him and the potty on the head.
Nurse Mary enters the room.
Yeah, and we see a very different side of her.
So, you're not a drip after all.
Oh, no. So, Mr. Spycatcher, how's it going?
Well, not much luck so far. I think he might be as difficult to find as a piece of hay in a massive stack full of needles.
So you're going to be around for quite a while, then?
Looks like it.
Good. Because, it can get pretty lonely around here, you know. God, it's nice to have someone healthy to talk to. Cigarette?
No, thank you. I only smoke cigarettes after making love. So back in England, I'm a 20-a-day man.
A man should smoke. It acts as an expectorant and gives his voice a deep, gravelly, masculine tone.
God, I love nurses. They're so disgustingly clinical.
Tell me, Captain Blackadder.
Edmund.
Edmund. When this war is over, do you think we might get to know each other a little better?
Yes, why not? When this madness is finished, perhaps we could go cycling together. Take a trip down to the Old Swan at Henley and go for a walk in the woods.
Yes. Or we could just do it right now on the desk.
Yeah, okay.
And just for once, he gets the girl.
He does indeed.
Or she gets him, where it's really her driving this, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Back in the hospital, George asks where Nurse Mary is and is informed that she is in her office with the captain. He sighs and says that she's got such a hard life, tied to her desk all the time.
Blackadder then enters the ward.
Yes, and George notes that the rumour is that he's been seeing quite a lot of Nurse Mary.
Yes, and Blackadder remarks that he's actually seen almost all of Nurse Mary.
He then confides in George that he has almost caught the spy, before asking Smith how he's doing.
Did you see Baldrick in bed with Smith at this stage? That's really good. George asks Smith if he's seen anything suspicious, and he says no.
Well, how does Smith respond?
He says 9, to which George assumes he means he's seen 9 suspicious things, which is quite a lot.
Certainly. A little bit later in the doctor's office, during a post-coital cigarette,
Post-coital, that's what I've written as well.
Mary asks Blackadder if he has anyone special in his life. How does he respond?
Well, he quite accurately reports that his only true love is himself.
Yeah. But she means someone he wants to shelter from all the harm and hurt, and someone he loves.
He reiterates he means himself. Yes, that's right.
Still him, really.
And she asks if he's not even got any casual girlfriends, but he says that he's been in the army a long time, and when he signed up, they were still fighting colonial wars, and if they saw someone in a skirt, they shot him and took his country.
He asks about her love life, and she says that she did have someone, but he bought it. And Blackadder misunderstands this and goes to tally up what he might owe her.
Yeah, might be quite expensive at this stage, but she corrects him without seeming too offended.
Yes, by telling him that her fiancé died whilst test driving a tank. She thinks he should be scrapped.
At this point, there's a brief conversation about tanks before Blackadder notes that he can't talk too much about this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. He then asks more about this fiancé. Did he go to one of the great universities?
Yeah, she said he's very clever, I think, which gives Blackadder this idea, and he lists these 3 great universities.
Oxford, Cambridge and
Hull.
Mm-hmm. And she agrees before changing the subject to making big love rather than small talk.
At this point, Blackadder suggests that she might want to accompany him when he heads up to headquarters later on.
So that's where we go, headquarters, and Blackadder introduces Mary to Melchett. Now, after explaining that the Germans have been insulting his shirts, he asks her opinion on who the spy might be.
First of all, she mentions Darling because he poo-pooed Blackadder, and this upsets Melchett greatly.
Yes, can you remember the discussion about poo-poo?
Well, I don't have it word for word, but he notes that there is now enough evidence against Darling for at least a court-martial. Poo-pooing in itself is a court-martial offence. And he relates a tale of a previous incident of poo-pooing, which was poo-pooed, and all the poo-pooing led to a bit of trouble.
It did indeed. Mary's second suggestion is Mr. Smith. But again, Blackadder disagrees, as even the Germans would not be stupid enough to place a spy with a strong accent undercover.
At last, Blackadder is ready to reveal who he believes the culprit is.
Well, it's perfectly simple. It's you.
Edmund!
Baldric, explain yourself, Blackadder, before I have you shot for being rude to a lady.
Well, sir, the first seeds of suspicion were sown when Lieutenant George unwittingly revealed that she spoke German. Do you deny, Nurse Fletcher Brown, or should I say Nurse Fleischerbaum, that you helped Lieutenant George with the German words in his letters?
No, I did.
My suspicions were confirmed when she probed me expertly about tank movements.
Oh, Edmund, how could you after all we've been through?
And then the final irrefutable proof. Remember you mentioned a clever boyfriend?
Yes?
I then leapt on the opportunity to test you. I asked if he'd been to one of the great universities, Oxford, Cambridge, or Hull.
Well?
You failed to spot that only 2 of those are great universities.
Swine!
That's right. Oxford's a complete dump.
Well, quite. No true Englishwoman could have fallen into that trap.
Oh, Edmund, I thought there was something beautiful between us. I thought you loved me.
Nah. Take it away, boy.
Rouse! Good work, Blackadder. I'd better go and assemble a firing squad.
Who stumbles in at this point?
It's Smith, the German-accented would-be spy fellow.
Yeah, only to be jumped on from Darling, claiming him to be the guilty man, until Melchett points out what?
This is Bernard, he's a British spy. It's him that revealed the leak in the hospital.
Yes, he's been working undercover for so long, he's picked up a teensy-weensy little accent.
Darling's quite confused.
Blackadder is then made head of Operation Winkle, whilst Darling is made a complete arse.
Well, that's what he is at this stage. Melchett leaves and George arrives.
Yeah, asking what's happening to Nurse Mary.
Yeah, he's seen her being led off to a firing squad.
Yeah, he can't believe it, but at least he will have lots of gossip for his next letter to his Uncle Herman in Munich.
Oh dear.
Apparently this uncle loves his letters and was even told about Melchett's smelly shirts.
Oh dear.
Oh dear indeed. And at this, a smug Darling watches as Blackadder races out to tell Melchett. Now surely George would be shot if he runs out to save Mary.
Yeah, but George has got enough connections that he'd maybe just be able to brush this one under the carpet.
Possibly, but George doesn't realise he's got connections, that's the point.
Yeah, but Melchett knows.
Yeah, but Melchett would want to shoot him.
He wouldn't want to shoot him, he'd want to cover up for him. He went to the right school. He's got the right tie.
Possibly.
Yeah, they'd write it off as the, boys will be boys.
You think?
But I suppose it's left to the viewer to decide whether Mary survived.
What do you think?
I'm going to say she did, because it would be a bit sad if she did not.
Okay, let's go with that.
Obviously, we'll find out in the subsequent episode whether Blackadder remains head of Operation Winkle.
Yeah, I've got a feeling he may not.
No.
But there we have it. One of the best.
It's a great episode. Flawless.
Yeah, I would say so.
Do you have a favourite line?
I've got 2.
Okay.
The first would be that when he joined the army, if they found a man in a skirt, they would shoot him and steal his country.
Okay.
And the second one is that he only smokes after sex, so back home he's a 20 a day man.
My favourite one is after he's been accosted by Darling at the start. Darling insists he's just doing his job, and Blackadder says how lucky he is that his job is also his hobby.
Yeah. Do you have any trivia for us?
Nothing specific to the episode. I think we'll save trivia for our next episode, since we've got a finale to deal with.
Okay. General Hospital was first broadcast on the 26th of October 1989. 2 guest stars this week, both whom we've seen already. Miranda Richardson, obviously playing Nurse Mary Fletcher Brown, and Bill Wallace played Smith. This is his third of 3 Blackadders. We've only seen him once before, and he played Mr. Ploppy, the jailer, in season 2.
He's a hero of mine. I presume he's also in season 1 that we've not seen yet.
He was indeed, yeah.
We'll get to that. Everyone that we talk about will have to say, oh yeah, we've mentioned these guys. This is where they were.
Yeah. Okay, what trivia do I have? Not much. But King George, he changed the family name from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to Windsor in 1917. It was a bit of a rebrand from the German to...
Mid-World War.
Yeah. Also, Fletcher and Brown,
Okay.
the two
Mary's
surnames,
names, yeah.
surnames, were the actors' surnames of characters Ratchet and Miller in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So the
They were
two...
nurses, yeah.
That's all I've got this week.
Okay.
Next time we have a goodbye.
That sounds a bit final. Okay, we'll look forward to that one, and we'll see folks then.
Cheerio.
Bye.